During his address, the president mentioned several foreign policy challenges facing the country, including unrest in Venezuela and combating terror in the Middle East. But the president also spoke about the relationship between the U.S. and North Korea and the upcoming meeting he has with its leader.
If I had not been elected President of the United States, we would right now, in my opinion, be in a major war with North Korea. Much work remains to be done, but my relationship with Kim Jong-un is a good one. Chairman Kim and I will meet again on February 27th and 28th in Vietnam.
I want to bring in Johanna Maska from Los Angeles. She's the CEO of the Global Situation Room, a consulting firm. She was also an aide to President Barack Obama. Johanna, thanks so much for joining us. The president confirmed that a second summit is happening with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. What can we expect from that?
Yeah, I traveled with President Obama to 42 countries, dozens of summits. And I can say that rarely does a summit alone impact policy. And so my question is very similar to what Major Garrett already said that he asked the White House, which is, what have they gotten accomplished since the last summit? And I think that's the big question, is summits alone don't do much.
And the White House has long been touting progress, as you know, in denuclearization on talks with the Korean Peninsula, but we haven't seen much progress from the regime. So how close are we really to denuclearization?
Exactly, and that's that's the big question, and I think it has to do with Iran as well. I mean, to really have an impact, you need allies, and so what the Obama administration was working on is working with allies to have checks and balances to make sure that anytime you're working on denuclearization, that you have those checks in places. And I think the problem with going it alone is that you don't have the very checks that you need in places. I mean, I think that the Trump administration largely has been incoherent, naive, and then motivated by just do anything against what President Obama did. And so I think, if you're hitting on North Korea, it's very similar as if you're hitting on Iran and if you're hitting on Syria.
Well, talking about Iran, President Trump went after Iran again, calling them a danger to the U.S. Take a listen.
My administration has acted decisively to confront the world's leading state sponsor of terror, the radical regime in Iran. It is a radical regime. They do bad things. To ensure this corrupt dictatorship never acquires nuclear weapons, I withdrew the United States from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal.
So on Sunday's Face the Nation, he said he'd keep troops in Iraq to watch Iran. What do you make of his comments on Iran?
Yeah, I think they're ill-informed. I mean, that's, and I think actually that's one area that you find bipartisan unity. So it's interesting that the president called for unity because there was unity just recently when the Senate overwhelmingly supported, a resolution basically to say the Trump administration is wrong about Syria and about Afghanistan and pulling out the troops. And so what we've got is overwhelming bipartisan resistance to the Trump administration on foreign policy. And so whether that's Syria, whether that's Iran, again, with Iran, I think you're seeing the idea of keeping troops in Iraq. That's something that the Obama administration drew down because the war was in Afghanistan. Now he's moving his eye off the target, and he's moving his eye back to a target that was already being dealt with a bipartisan, with a multinational coalition.
So the president did repeat his call to pull all U.S. troops out of Syria because he says ISIS has been defeated. The intelligence community, as you know, clearly breaks with the president on this. How do you think after his address, Americans are going to remember the president's approach and sort of legacy when it comes to the Middle East? Obviously, he still has a couple of years left here, but nevertheless, when it comes to his approach to handling that part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think one big mark that we're not talking about is Saudi Arabia. So when we're talking about the Middle East, there's a wide area in the Middle East that we should talk about. Obviously, Syria, there's a lot of questions on what he's doing. Like I mentioned already, the Republicans are the ones who are as curious as the Democrats. But I think what I was most taken by in terms of his address tonight was that he highlighted World War II survivors and liberators at the very same time that he's threatening to undo the alliances that have kept us safe. And so whether that's working with our allies in the Middle East or, what he's doing in Syria, it's dangerous to go it alone. It's dangerous to go out before Congress and just give a speech and say you're going to do a summit and not read in the very people that you need read in. And I think that we see that whether he's just committed us to a blank check arms race or whether he's changing the policy in Syria.
All right, Johanna Maska, thanks very much for your time and for your perspective. Really appreciate it.